car's completely off. Key is in it. And we're gonna start it. Oh. What's up, guys? It feels like it's 100 degrees right now. We're gonna get ready for some night rides, but CJ's X3 has no working lights. None of these lights work. We actually cut out all the old harnesses and all the wiring that was previously on here that I installed, all the switches that were on here. We took it all out. We're installing a Switchpros today, and I'm excited to show you guys this device. So the Switchpros, I've been meaning to talk to you guys about this device, this product, for a very long time. Now, I made a wiring video for UTVs that shows off how to wire a switch, and that got over 44,000 views, which means a lot of you guys are trying to figure out how to wire your accessories to your Can-Am, to your Razor, and any of your UTVs. So that's great. You guys are do-it-yourself type of people. I like that. Well, this is a product that's going to save you a lot of time. I think it saves you a lot of money, and it saves you a lot of headache. It makes everything so simple.
That was easy.
And it has some really, really cool features. For one, if you're like me, you don't buy all your accessories at once. So, for example, me, I bought a light bar, I had some rear pods, I had a couple things on my X3, and I wired them for those specific devices. Well, over time, I started adding more stuff. I added a winch, I added more pods, I added pods on the bumper, I added dome lights, and you keep adding these wiring harnesses to your UTV, and at the end of the day, I'm ashamed to say it becomes a big giant mess of wiring. At the beginning, 5 of the switches were all in one harness, look great, but once you keep adding these accessories, it continues to add and add harnesses, and it looks horrible. So this product is made to simplify that in a huge way. It eliminates all relays, it eliminates all fuses, and it eliminates a whole bunch of unnecessary wiring. So this is a solid state programmable switch panel power system. It comes with this awesome switch, gives you 12 clicky switches. I don't know if you guys can hear that. There's also an 8 switch panel, which is a lot less money, very similar as far as what it can do, but we decided to go with the 12 switch for CJ's X3 because he's got a ton of accessories, lights, and a lot more stuff to come, right? GPS, rugged radios, a bunch of stuff over there. And yeah, so he needed the switch that had 12 buttons on it. Besides the fact that this has 12 buttons versus the 8 switch Switchpros, which is in that box, like I said, is it has a lot more features, which we'll get into in just a second. So in the box, you get the actual power system, this big brick of aluminum with alien technology in it. It can handle up to 150 amps total, and it's obviously a very high quality piece, being fully epoxied, and is very water resistant because all the connectors on here are weather pack, so they have a seal in the connector. Also, obviously, you get the switch, 12 switches on here, plus a lot of indicator lights at the bottom, these LEDs. They do give you this cover that will go over that, but we'll put that after we install everything. There's a multitude of stickers because this thing can power up just about anything, it seems like. You could disable sway bars for your 4-wheel drive Jeeps. You could turn on the fans for your transcooler. You could turn on, you know, locks and unlocks for your race car, whatever it may be. Cooling fans, turn signals, light bars, 8-pillar pods, chase lights, auxiliary batteries, horns. Pretty much everything you could think of that'll take power, 12 volts, this can power it up. So now there is a limit. Most of the circuits are going to be 15 amp, except for 4 of them, which are 35 amp each, can handle a lot more power. So this can power up a multitude of things, including some of these high power cooling fans. And for us, it's going to power up the SMB particle separator, the helmet pumpers, rugged radios, the 50-inch light bar, everything we have. So very cool device. Also in the box, you get 3 wiring harnesses and a cable. This is the main cable. You're going to connect your power block to the battery, directly to the battery. Then you have the connection from the switch to the power block. Then you have this harness that holds some trigger wires, 3 trigger wires, as well as the power outputs for your devices you're going to be powering. And these other 2 wires are for ignition and backlit sources. And then last but not least is this 4-pin connector. As you can tell, this is a lot bigger gauge wire. I believe it's 12 or 10 gauge, and this outputs 35 amps each. This can power up your high draw devices, those cooling fans, those whatever you may have. So this is great, and it's a welcome addition over the 8 switch, which doesn't have that. The 8 switch is still nice. You guys can see it here through the box. Very similar. It's a little bit smaller as far as the module goes. And then you don't have those 4 35 amp outputs. You can do up to 30 amps, I believe, but you have to tie 2 of the circuits together. And every circuit is tied to the switch. So switch 1 will be pin this or pin that. I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look at the instructions. Versus this new 12 switch is a lot different. Any switch on the panel here can output up to 4 outputs, and there's 17 outputs in total. 16 are 12-volt outputs. The 17th output is a ground output, which rarely is used, but for example, you control the ground side of a relay if you needed to do that. So this is very cool because you don't have to worry about what switch is where. You can rearrange them in the future if you needed to. And also, besides the fact that it has 17 outputs, there's also trigger wires. So what that means is, there's 12 switches here and you have 17 outputs. You could actually play with this and figure out how many outputs you want for each switch. Say each switch is only 1 output. Well, that leaves you with 5 outputs that you could use for other things. And how do you control those outputs? With these trigger wires. So these trigger wires can be used to turn on different outputs. So we're gonna have 3 auxiliary switches that are gonna input into here via these trigger wires, and they're gonna turn on other devices. And that's gonna be, I believe, one of our rugged radios intercom systems, and I believe the pumper as well. Or what was the other one? The GPS system. Sorry about that. Lots of cool features with this. Besides the fact that this device is awesome on a standalone, you can also use your Bluetooth device, Android or iOS, to turn on these switches from your phone, which is amazing. And we're going to show you guys that, or actually we probably already showed you at the beginning of this video, but we're going to show you guys more in depth about how the Bluetooth works. But we're gonna go ahead and install this device. I'm gonna tell you guys right now, yes, they are a bit expensive, but it's gonna save you so much time in wiring, so much headache in wiring, and everything is gonna be so much cleaner. So although this isn't waterproof, it is very water resistant for you mudslingers out there, and it's a great option for you guys out there that have issues with maybe water getting into relays or getting into switches, because I've had that problem in the past and I don't even take my car in the water.
Okay, here goes. Come on, Stewie, in the pool. No!
So we're gonna start off with finding a home for this, and we're gonna connect the positive side to the battery. So one side goes to the battery, the other side goes to the Switchpros power module itself. And make sure you guys are using only this cable. This is the cable recommended by Switchpros. Do not add another section of cable, as it can cause voltage drop issues and cause this device to not work properly. So let's go find this at home. Make sure it's close enough to the battery so the cable reaches, and then we'll move on to install some of the other stuff. So real quick before we start, I want to show you guys the difference between the 8 switch and the 12 switch. Obviously the size difference is there's pretty much an extra row of switches, which is nice for you guys that are running multiple devices. And then the panel itself, the power system panel, is a lot bigger, and it does have this extra connection for the higher output circuit. So pretty much the same concept, but this does have a lot more features. Really spend time and look at what you're going to purchase. Yes, this is expensive versus the 8 switch, but I honestly feel it's worth it, especially if you run a lot of accessories like we're going to do on CJ's X3. And don't mind the block. Construction is going on in the house. So finding a home for the Switchpros isn't the most easiest part. If you have a 2-seat, you're gonna struggle trying to find a spot without it being in the way. On this 4-seat, it fits perfectly on this panel underneath this cubby on the second row. So it fits here nice. We put the screws through the panel. This panel, we rarely remove it, and it's pretty secure. It's not gonna go anywhere. Besides mounting that, we did run the power cable from the Switchpros to the positive on the battery. When you're doing this and you haven't hooked up any of the other wires, you're gonna want to leave the battery disconnected. So the negative is disconnected here, so we don't mess up our Switchpros. So next we're gonna run the cable that comes from this power module to the switch itself, and it's this very end connector. It's one big long cable. Let's go ahead and route the wiring for that. All right, guys, for the time being, we're gonna go ahead and connect the switch and let it float for now. CJ's gonna work on taking out that start stop button because we think we're gonna mount it right there. So in the kit, they do give you these studs that you can twist on to the back of the Switchpros, and then use these metal little retainer brackets, and then some nuts, and you can hold the Switchpros in place. Just drill a couple of holes, and yeah, you can mount it up. Now the push to start button is pretty cool on the Canon MX3, but this is gonna be so much better. So we're gonna drill a couple of holes, and we'll put the retain brackets on the back and the nuts, and that'll be living there for at least a good few weeks, right? Yeah, so let's do it. All right, we got the Switchpros mounted. No, it is not perfect, and that's because this is temporary. Like we said, we're gonna go ahead and plug this in as soon as CJ tightens up the screws. All right, so we're gonna move on to installing the harness that powers up all these badass lights. With that being said, one of the functions about the Switchpros is you can turn any single light into a strobe light. Which is really cool because we put the S1 Baja Designs pods at the very back, and we're going to use those as chase lights. Just another cool feature that Switchpros offers, and you can configure all this on the Bluetooth settings through your phone, which is really cool. There's so many settings on there, and the way you can do it on your phone makes everything so much easier versus trying to, you know, press a bunch of buttons on the switch itself. All right, so we do have 2 connectors. This one only has 4 pins and can power up your higher draw applications up to 35 amps each circuit. But this is your main one. This one is 15 amps each circuit, but besides the circuits for the outputs, we have a couple other wires, 2 of them being well, for the UTV, we're going to tie these together, and these are pretty much going to be your ignition. If you're using this on a vehicle like a truck and you want the backlit functionality to go on and off, I believe it's the blue wire that you will power up, excuse me, the white wire you will power up to, say, your park light. So when your truck goes into night mode and the park lights turn on, the Switchpros turns into night mode and dims the backlight. So those 2 circuits we're going to tie together on the UTV application because we don't have that function on UTVs. 3 of the wires, which we'll be using in the future, are trigger wires from other switches. For example, if you want to use your factory light switch, your high beams to trigger multiple lights or light bars, you can use the trigger wire to be an input from your light switch, and then your high beams can be in multiple lights at once, which is pretty cool. So that's 3 wires. Then you have a ground that needs to go directly to your negative on your battery, not anywhere else, especially not on a chassis. And then the rest of them are going to be outputs. So these are all color coded. They do give you full instructions. They give you color coded schematics here. Each pin has its color, and you're gonna have to figure out where you're gonna mount each wire. So for us, we wrote down all the accessories that we were gonna use. We eliminated some that we were not gonna use through the Switchpros, but we figured out where we're gonna mount our switches. For example, these were gonna be amber, pods, and shock tower together in one. This was gonna be the light bar. We got the mirrors, chase light, rear pods, whips, rock lights, dome lights, the ignition to start the vehicle, the shocker for the exhaust, the S&B particle separator, and the pumper from Rugged Radios. And in the future, we will be using the trigger wires to control our radio on, our Rugged Radios on, and our GPS on. So with that being said, once you figure that out, you're gonna wanna map out what switch goes to what output. So this is a simple setup. One switch is going to control one output. You can get a little crazy and have one switch control 4 outputs. The possibilities are pretty broad. So for example, on this one, we're going to do keep it simple. Amber pods, output 1. 50-inch light bar, output 2. Mirrors is going to be output 5. We skipped 3 and 4 because that's actually part of this guy and we don't need these yet. 1 through 4 outputs are going to be on the big guy, and the rest of the outputs are going to be on the smaller harness. So just configure how you're going to set it up, so when it comes to wiring, you have everything where it goes where you want it to go. So we have everything set up. SMB is switch 14 or output 14. The rock lights is output 10, and so on and so forth. Map it out. Before we start installing this, I do want to mention, so you guys understand how simple this makes wiring. Most of your devices that you purchase, your light bars, your pods, your mirrors, they come with a relay harness. The relay harness is controlled by a switch, and all that stuff can be eliminated, and all you need is the 2 wires going to the actual device. For example, the 50-inch light bar, all it needs is power and ground. and the power is going to come straight from the Switchpros. It's not going to go through any relays. It's not going to go through any fuses. It is not needed. This device is a smart device. It knows if there's an issue, and it will stop outputting power to that device if there was an issue such as a short to ground. So we don't need fuses, we don't need relays. This is why everything is so simple. Every single device at the front, or every electronic light that we ran to the front, the mirrors, the pods, the shock tower 10-inch, the light bar, the rear chase light, the rear pods, all of them simply have power and ground running to them. And let me show you guys how that looks inside the car. All right guys, so the front of the car, right over there, all my lights have wires, power and ground, running through the tunnel and ending up right here. It's very simple, power and ground for everybody. And then we separated the powers and the grounds because only the powers are gonna go to your Switchpros, and your grounds are gonna go to the ground stud on your distribution block from your factory, you know, your OEM Can-Am. On the Razors, I know the Pro XP does have a device similar to the X3s. On the Turbo S, I'm not sure because I don't work on them that much. So the grounds, obviously, like I said, go straight to the stud. Then your powers, as you can see here, we have them all labeled except for one because I already know what it is. Whips, mirrors, light bars, and you're gonna pretty much wire these to the Switchpros via what you already set up. So if, for example, we have the mirrors, you go to your you know, your paper that you already set up. I know that mirrors is right here and is output number 5. We'll find output 5 on the instructions, and let's see, where is it at? Output 5 is pin 1 and it's green. So all we have to do is connect the green wire to the power for the mirrors. Really simple. Same thing for the light bars, for the chase light, and all the other devices like rock lights, whips. All right guys, so we connected the harness right here. I did separate the ground and I ran it to my battery, connected that. So now this Switchpros does have power. The 3 pink trigger wires we're not gonna use just yet, so I tied them back. The rest of the outputs go to the devices we're gonna control, and that's gonna be really simple. Like I showed you guys earlier, make sure you write them down and you know exactly what output controls what device. And then we have our ignition and backlight power. That's gonna go to the eyelet on the accessory post on the Can-Am. First 2 switches are done, and they go to that main big giant switch that only has 4 pins on it. We went down the line. So the first one was amber pods and shock tower put together, and that's those right there at the very top. And then the second output was the 50-inch light bar, which is that guy right there. So those 2 powers are hooked up. The next we will be moving on to output 5, which if you look at the schematics that they give you, output 5 right there is terminal 1, which is green. Be very careful and know what you're choosing when it comes to the wires. This one is green with black, and that's not it. And this one's light green, also not it. It's the dark green one. So the dark green one will hook up to the power for our mirrors, which we have labeled here. So we'll do that now. We're gonna continue and doing the same exact process for all of these. So we're gonna go ahead and burn through these real quick so we could get it done. But we are gonna show you guys how to do the start stop button. It's very simple. It's pretty much just running 1 power wire, but I'll show you guys which one that is at the back of the button. And the rest of them are pretty much the same exact process as these other 2. So we are using these weather resistant butt connectors. They heat shrink, so once you make your crimp connection, you heat them up and they become a watertight seal. All right guys, so all our powers are hooked up here. So we got powers running to all our lights in the back and in the front. Then when it comes to the grounds, I got 4 grounds here. As you can see here, these are all eyelets, and they're gonna go on the large ground at the very top of the power block. Now another option is a distribution for the grounds, and we are gonna install this in the future. The reason we're not doing it today is because we forgot to purchase this cable. You would have to buy a negative cable that goes from this to that, or to the battery. So I didn't install that, but as you can see here, it can distribute all your grounds, so it's a lot simpler, and every device can have its own ground. So for the time being, we're gonna do it this way, no big deal. And then obviously we have this these 2 wires from the Switchpros that controls the ignition on as well as the backlight, and we're gonna put that on our accessory post, which is the very bottom post on the distribution block right there. Actually, we get an ignition source from a different spot. This will work fine if you're not running a start stop button, but because we're running the start stop button, it kind of caused some errors with the Switchpros, and that's because there's only power while you're pressing the button. So while we were pressing the button, it would reset the power on and off. It was really weird. So if you're gonna do a start stop button, you got to get ignition voltage from a different source. So we've been putting these grounds right here. There's multiple grounds Doesn't look the prettiest, and that's why we got that distribution block, but we don't have the cable for now, so this is gonna have to do. So before you're able to actually use the Switchpros, we're gonna actually put the ignition temporarily on the battery power. That way we can connect to it via the Bluetooth app, configure all our switches via the Bluetooth app, and make sure we're able to turn on the ignition, because the ignition is now on this corner button right over here. So the way I did that and the way I eliminated the start stop button is very simple. I'm gonna show you the connector. So obviously this is the start stop button. So to eliminate this, as you can see, as a pigtail, you're gonna go to the body side harness and you're gonna tap into the black with yellow striped wire. Now it might be different throughout the years of the Can-Am, but this is a 2021 model and it does work. I confirmed it. This switch is actually going to be a momentary switch. So that's one other thing that I want to mention to you guys. Yes, all these switches can be configured to be on and off or momentary. What does that mean? An on and off switch will be on after you press it and it stays on. A momentary switch will be on only while you're holding the button, just like a start stop button for the Can-Am. So while you're holding the button, it's providing power. When you let go, it stops providing power. The on and off obviously would be press it and it continuously holds power until you press it again. So that's how you do the start stop button. We're gonna go ahead and program it via the phone app. And it's very simple. Follow your guidelines. Obviously switch 1 is output so and so, switch 2 is output so and so. Configure it the way you wrote it down, and it'll be pretty damn simple. And it loads up and you're gonna configure the switches right there. And there's so many settings. You could control the backlit. You could change the backlit to red, blue, green. CJ's probably gonna do blue because the car's blue. You can see here, configure switches, set on and off, momentary function. Switch 1 could be on and off. I think most of them are gonna be on and off, except for, let's see, 8, 9. So 9 we're gonna set up to be momentary. So switch 9, we're gonna change to momentary, and then that's it. Then we'll go back and we'll go back to the switch outputs. Go to switch outputs. So Timmy's currently configuring the app. For example, switch 1, we set it to output 1. Switch 2, set it to output 2, and so on and so forth. Very simple. All right, guys, before we show you the functions of the Switchpros, I messed up, and it's my fault, but not really my fault. So you have to hook this wire up, the white and blue wire coming from the Switchpros, to an ignition source. The problem is on the Can-Ams, the accessory post here only has power while you're pressing the start stop button or while it's running. And unfortunately, that was causing our Switchpros to reset every single time we try pressing the start button. So we need to find another ignition source for this, and the only thing I can think of is a backlit power going to one of the switches. If any of you guys has a better option, then let us know, but this is what we're gonna do for now. So the ignition voltage is gonna go to the back of one of your switches. This red power wire going to the 4x4 lock switch or 4x4 switch. I you know, piggybacked onto the power on there, so now the ignition works properly and we can actually use this. All right, so the boys are putting the car back together. Timmy is setting up a couple more settings. I do want to mention on the start stop functionality, we got it down. It works great. One thing to note, in the future, because we're going to replace the dash with a carbon fiber dash from Jeffrey's Performance, what we're going to do is possibly hide the key and only use the Switchpros to start the car. Now, why would we do that? Well, you can hide the key in a position, you know, somewhere in the dash, very difficult to get to. Just leave it there, and you can only start the car with the pin pad. You can actually use this as a pin pad, and you will only be able to start the car using your code. Here's some strobe functionality that were put into the rear chase lights. Real quick, these are just S1 pods, Ambers from Baja Designs. Normally, they would just have on and off function. Same thing with the built-in chase light that DesertWorks put in. But now with the Switchpros, we could turn these into strobing chase lights.
Which you could still have the on and off. On or off, and then if you touch it twice, it flashes.
So double functionality.
Double functionality.
That's pretty cool. So if you don't want it to flash, you can actually turn the flashing off and just, you know, have them on regular. Let's do the S1 pods, yeah? That works great. On, and then just on and off.
Or burst.
That is dope. So really happy with the way that turned out. You could do the same thing for your light bars. Not sure why you would want that, but I guess, you know, some guys do that. They leave the car parked and they flash all the front lights. But let's show them the ambers. So one switch is going to turn on both the center 10-inch and the A-pillar ambers. He usually rides with them both, so we just combine them on one switch. And then there's the mirrors. So there's the dome lights. We are going to put 4 more. It's going to be super bright in here. And then there is a switch for the rock lights, which we are going to get new rock lights. And then the particle separator that turns on and off like you would expect. Also the pumper from rugged radios that we're going to install, that's already set up, but obviously we have to mount it. And then last but not least is the shocker. Now there is an option in the Switchpros to be able to turn on some of these switches even with the ignition off, and you have to set that up in the settings, set them up as battery power. What you would do is turn on switch 10, that will turn on the valve, and then turn on the engine. So you can literally turn it on and off from your phone, which is freaking amazing. So So there it is, guys, full Switchpros install. Sorry for the lighting. We did this on, you know, a weekday in the night, and it came out great. I think it's awesome. So Timmy, any thoughts on the new Switchpros?
Honestly, it's probably one of the better devices you could probably run for electronics. Make everything more simple. Yeah,
a lot more simple. People might think, oh, it's confusing, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. It's really not. It's just a big power cable, one ground, an ignition source, which we did have trouble, but that's not really, you know, the Switchpros fault. That's kind of Can-Am, the way they handle their ignition, and everything else is just providing powers. And I think it's freaking awesome. So that's it for this video. We're ready for our night ride. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out, and stay dirty. Fucking bright. I'll definitely see you with those. That's bad. Turn on the whips, fool. Ooh. Dome lights, dome lights. Light up in there. Those whips are freaking hella bright. Dude, Switchpros is awesome. What this is a solid state, what do you call this shit? There is no fuses and relays involved. Fuck, I'm sweating like a pig. Bring the light, bring the light. Alright guys, so like I was saying, holy fucking diddly. Timmy, what are you doing? Catch that next time. CJ, I can see your butt cheeks on me. Look at that. You know what I'm saying?